Audio check. Testing, testing. Can y'all hear me? Testing, testing. Can y'all hear me? We good? All right, cool. Hold on. One thing with this camera, real quick. All right, how about now? Mic check, mic check. Good. Okay, good. Season 1, Ball Knowledge, Episode 4, Darwin's Dinosaurs. We have the most content heavy, most to get through episodes yet. Real quick before I begin, how's the music volume? Should I turn it up, turn it down? Is it good where it's at? Okay. Let's begin. So, we're going to look at dinosaurs, and first and foremost, we're going to preface by saying that I don't deny large creatures. We're not a giant creature denier. But what we have is a conflation between two paradigms, a collision of two paradigms here, worldviews. And it's a matter of interpretation. So we're going to go through some history. We're going to look at some of the old world's views on behemoths, on giant creatures, what you would call, I mean, there's all kinds of names for them, and we're going to go through some of them. And we're going to look at the new world, the new order, the new cosmos, okay? And how they interpret them and where they collide and how this has evolved over time. So, as we've covered before, we have this word cosmos. Now, this just means order or arrangement, or more commonly and more often used in ancient Greek, the whole world. It was known to denote the whole earth, the whole inhabitable world. Okay. And then this one is pneuma. I might have covered this before. I don't remember, but I threw it up here just in general. It can be used as spirit, as breath, or wind. And then your transliteration and porting to English remains the same. It's preserved as just pneuma. So now to get into the content here, we have the word from Greek ophis, which means specifically snake or serpent. Now, when we anglicize or anglicize this word, we render it as typically ophi or ophio. And you see here, like with the coining of ophiology. Okay, that would be the study of snakes or serpents. And then we have your biblical examples, classic textual examples like But the serpent, or the Ophis, was most intelligent. Okay, this is the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve in Genesis. That word there is Ophis in the Greek Septuagint. And another word we're going to keep in mind and look at as we look at the old paradigm is dracon or dracon. And for some reason, this gets butchered in English transliteration or Anglicization because we take the transliterated word in Latin letters, dracon or dracone, and we change the K into a G. I don't know why that is, and I haven't seen that done with really any other word. But this is the origin for the word dragon. And then here we have another example of the word in action, the word in use. Psalm 73:13, LXX. So LXX just means the 70, referring to the 70 translators. That's the Greek Septuagint. You yourself made the sea's strength with your power. You shattered the heads of dragons, or drakonton. Okay, that would be dragons plural, upon the water. And that's a hymn, a psalm from King David. So there's a lot we don't know about the old world, about the old order of things, and we don't know nearly as much as many of us would like to think. And I'm just throwing up a very underlooked example here. Think about cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. This did not exist until the 1500s, the standardized system we use for cardinal directions. Here we have a map example by the Venetian, the Italian, Fra Mauro, and it's dated to 1450. And you'll notice that with the writing and things on it, I mean, we don't have a very big picture here, but if you look this up, you'll see the writing, and this is, as it is in this display, straight. This is upright. Yet Europe, when you look here, there's Italy, that boot right there. The world is depicted with what we would call today south in the place of north. So your cardinal directions don't yet exist in any form of standard system as late as we see in 1450 AD. So a lot of what we have and take for granted in our understanding today is very much modern, very much new in the sense of going through antiquity and ancient times and so on and so forth. And a great example here is cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. Not a thing to Fra Mauro, not understood at this time. And this is a beautiful map, by the
Danny
way.
A. Masters just tipped $3. Logos, Dalos, Pathos, Fucko, Monkey, Monkey, Retard, Dragons, Dragons, Hebrew, Abrahamic, Middle East, Kosher, Farts.
Thank you, Danny. But yeah, this is a very, very revealing map that has been studied a lot by a lot of elites as well. But just to throw up here, this is what we're told, and you'll see here, you'll notice historians, they can't agree on this. They can't come to a common consensus as to where the compass and the standardizing of cardinal directions even comes from. So what they traditionally attribute it to is Flavius Jogia, or Jogus, and that's the Latinized rendering of it anyways. But look what they say. They say, oh, he's reputed to have been a mariner and a pilot, a marine pilot, so a sailor, a seaman. Credited with developing the compass, but this is debated. So apparently he does develop the compass, he's credited for it, but then they say, now they know the surname has been demonstrated as a translation error. And then at the end they go, it's also likely he did not exist at all. So apparently the consensus today is the person who invented the compass actually didn't exist, yet here's a statue of supposedly him in Italy. So there's this conflicting story. As you see, historians, they can't even agree how we come to terms with north, south, east, and west. We don't even know where this comes from. But what we do know is this is no earlier than the 1500s. So you can't even tell what direction you're looking in if you were to teleport yourself back to 1400s prior. This is just to give you guys an image of how we're trying to bridge things here. And of course, the governments, the NASA, federal arm of the United States here, has decided to name a part of the moon after this map maker. So the map I was just showing you, the creator, Fra Mauro, now has his name as part of the moon, dedicated by NASA. So it's a little nod. It's a little, hey, look at this, you know? So we'll start with Herodotus. We did this stream or two ago. This is not a dragon or any type of mythical large creature that you see in the movies, but here's an example of something we see in writing that we don't actually know to exist today. But that is described in not just by Herodotus, but multiple accounts. And here's what he basically says. There's a region in Arabia, and he saw bones of serpents and vertebrae in quantities so great it's impossible to make report of the number. And there were heaps of vertebrae, both large and small. The story goes that at the beginning of the spring, flying serpents, or flying snakes, in the Greek there is pteraton ophion, and this is where we get things like pterodactyl, and things with ptero means flying in Greek. So flying serpents, or flying snakes from Arabia, fly towards Egypt, and the birds there, called ibises, meet them at the entrance and kill them. The Arabians say on this account that the ibis has come to be greatly revered, and so on. And in the bottom right, you have a picture of the ibis. This is a bird, modern, existing today. But what we don't have is flying snakes or flying serpents. These are described as your typical snakes or serpents, no different, but with winged apparatuses that actually transport them in the air, airborne, aerially. And there's multiple accounts of this, but again, not something we have an understanding of today, not something that comes down to us now. Now, looking at dragons, we have many ancient accounts of this. Here's a Chinese account dated to AD 121. This is a Chinese dictionary, which was put out by the emperor over China. I forget which dynasty it is, but you can look this up. And it's just defining dragon, and it's treating it as a very real, very formidable creature, not as an allegory or some story. This is part of their official dictionary at the time. The chief of the scaled creatures, it can be dark or bright, slim or huge, short or long. It ascends to the sky at the spring equinox and hides in the depths below at the autumn equinox. And so this is from China, ancient China. Now we move to alien, and I'll get into alien here in a minute, but let's just look at another account really briefly. There's an Ethiopian land, which is a neighbor of Ethiopia. However, still very good and much to be envied, the bathhouse of the gods, which Homer sings to us as ocean or okeanos. Therefore, this land is the mother of dragons, mega in size, for they reach 30, well, I'll just give you the standard we use, 182 feet. They reach 182 feet, he says, specifically. And they are not called by the name of their kind, but are said to be elephant slayers or elephant killers. And they contend toward the greatest old age, or, in other words, they live longer to the greatest age of all creatures. He doesn't give a specific figure, but he's basically saying they live a very, very long time. And he's talking about 182-foot long dragons here. It sounds obviously like something you'd see in your Hollywood movies today. It's very desensitized in our culture. But this is a serious writer in a serious natural historic type of writing on animals. He's cataloging the animals of his contemporary time. But just to give you a perspective here of what he's claiming, what he's saying, here is the triumphal arch of the star in Paris, France. This is 162 and a half feet tall. And you'll see, look at the people standing all about around it and the size of this arch. Well, the dragon he's describing would extend about 20 feet taller than this. Just to give
Sponge Knicker just tipped $2. I got a long, slithery dragon snake in my pants for you.
All right. All right, so this is a translation I did. I spent some time translating this one myself because all the English versions you'll find of this passage specifically don't do it justice. This is a very mechanical, descriptive passage in Greek that is just pitifully handled in pretty much all your translations. So this is my translation here, and I'm going to take you through it because what he describes here is pretty explicit and it's pretty, I don't know, it's different. But let's just read it real quick. And Phrygian accounts say that dragons come to Phrygia also, and that they extend forward to 61 feet. And in midsummer, every day after downtown peak hour, they creep out of their burrows. And beside the river called Rundacos, they plant a certain part of their spiral, or spiras, against the earth. But raising up the rest of their body, the throat extended upward silently and motionlessly, and further their mouth opened wide, they thereupon vacuum in the birds as if a jinx emerged from their exhaling. So it's a wild description here of what he's attributing to the dragons of Phrygia. He's basically saying that they come out around evening to sunset time and they plant part of their base. They coil up part of their spiral against the earth, hoist up the front part of their body, the throat, the mouth, and they open wide this big mouth, and apparently they vacuum in the birds with an exhalation. So something they're releasing into the air sends birds that are flying above down into their mouth to catch. And no translation preserves the word used here, jinx. But when you see jinx here, think of it the way you use it and have used it since a youth or since your young years. Like when two people say something at the same time and you go, "Oh, jinx." That's the exact meaning of the word here. It's the same word used in the same way here. But yeah, that one's interesting. So we'll look at one more real quick. Here we have a Christian account, and this is a bit later. This is now dated AD 425. And here we go with another dragon encounter. They say about this time, a dragon of megalithic size appeared near Euroia in Epeiros and patrolled a certain bridge, devouring the cattle, sheep, horses, and men who happened to pass by that way. Donatos, the bishop of the city, went to this bridge accompanied by his clergymen. When the dragon saw them approaching, it reared its head, opened its jaws, and rushed forward to attack. The holy man, instead of fleeing, advanced toward the beast without sword, lance, or javelin, and Donatos made the sign of the cross with his hand and direct, spat directly into the open mouth of the dragon. The beast immediately fell to the earth, rolled over, and expired, as if being struck by a lethal weapon or a lightning bolt. And this is a quote from Salamane's Sozaminos, or Sozaman for short. So, whether or not you accept or reject these accounts, regardless of their veracity, emerging from these following old world regions we just looked at, what stands true regardless is we have a pattern of consistent narrative surrounding the reality of what's being called dragons. And from just the quotes we looked at, and there's an innumerable amount of quotes that obviously we're not covering, we're spanning the continents of Europe, Africa, Asia, and Asia Minor, or towards the Mediterranean. Specifically, Greece, Ethiopia, China, and Phrygia. Now, that is nearly spanning the whole world in these few quotes we've just looked at. So, regardless if any one of these quotes is accepted, what we have to consider is the phenomena of dragons is apparent in the ancient or old world everywhere. And then, of course, in the Bible itself as well. Out of the roughly 76 books of the Greek Bible, depending on how they're entitled or labeled, depending what version you're using, 18 of these books specifically contain mention of dragons as well. And you have both symbolic references to dragons used in metaphorical ways, as well as literal mentions of dragons used in literal ways, as in there's literally a dragon over there. So again, returning to one of the opening slides, it's a paradigmic issue we're looking at here in terms of dealing with the modern phenomena of what we call dinosaurs. And it's worthy of note just how things have transpired in world history. So, in the old cosmos, or the old world, the old order, power in the orb of the world was held in the east. And this would have been the Roman Empire, world Christendom. And the fall of the Roman Empire, many people will Google it or hear the Western concept that it was 476 AD. And this is not true. They say that the western part of the empire fell in 476. But the empire itself, the Roman Empire, the Romans, were around until dated to 1453. So the Christian Roman Empire eastwardly, which is now commonly referred to as Byzantium or the Byzantines, sometimes the Greeks. Power shifts, sparking the quote Renaissance, or the translation being rebirth of Western power. And that's going to be from 1453 onward and kicking off the Renaissance or the rebirth into the 1500s and forward and so on. And there's a shift within the West from Italy or Italia to what I'm calling Anglodom, or England, America, the British Empire, to use an umbrella term. So with this power shift and technology spreading, you have the, of course, Reformation. And from the launching of Italy's power, there's a major transition into English world power or British world power. And this is really solidified or finalized onward at about 1600, more or less. And of course, we've covered this in the last episode, but it's noteworthy to keep in mind Freemasonry coming out of Britain and out of the British Empire. So we'll look
Chris
at the
just tipped
development.
$3. I love dinos. Dinos love me. I love frogs. Frogs, vampires, retard Germany, Anglo-Sax measurements. Chris is Asian Mongol. Chris frogs. Chris is black.
Thank you, Chris. So here's a map of England from 1886, and you can see the expanse of their empire and all of their shipping routes. Very well portrayed here. And at the top, you have their Freemasonic motto, freedom, fraternity, and federation. So it's not just England where the Freemasonic dynasty, if you want to call it, reigned and was ruling. In modern France today, the same motto is actually the motto for the country itself. And here it's Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. And here we have from the French Revolution a image here from 1819, and it makes you wonder. So the Freemasons come out of England, then you have the French Revolution to enthrone. Okay, yeah, you're right. True. I didn't even think about that. Thank you. I think that's the only one. But yeah, that was a map. So that should be it on here though. But yeah, anyway, what was the revolution really about and how is it connected to the shifting of power out of Italy? Well, you can just see in the artwork and the things being displayed. What's being attacked here? What's being destroyed? Well, you have the Latin church's vestments here. Obviously, the blood dripping down into the floor. And the foot's on a Bible. There's crosses here. It's obviously depicting an overthrow or revolution against Christianity. And your red, white, and blue, the Phrygian cap, the cap of the Freemasons, it's all here. And we look at the outcome of the French Revolution and the Masonic takeover, and what is it? You can Wikipedia this stuff, and it's going to be pretty straightforward. It tells you the first state-sponsored atheistic religion, the cult of reason, or in French, the cult de la raison, intended to replace Christianity. And then, of course, the Freemasonic angle to it being cult of the supreme being. This is their name for God in Freemasonry, the supreme being. So this is the result of the French Revolution, and the state motto to this day is the motto of Freemasonry, which comes out of England, as we've covered. And there's more than just this. I mean, here you have a depiction of the Festival of Reason in Paris, 1793. And here is the pagan goddess Reason. And in French, she's holding her banner, Raison, or Raison. And you see the Greek laurel wreath here, symbolizing victory, victory for reason. Victory over who? Well, her foot is upon the crucifix. You have Christ on the cross. Her foot on top of the crucifix asserting victory for reason over Christ. This is really the French Revolution. Not really mentioned in school, I don't think, but we're building up the fall of the old world and the rise of the new. You had an old regime, the French call it ancien regime, and you have the rise of a new one. So here is, after the revolution, Festival of the Supreme Being. And I'm pretty sure Cam de Mars or Cham de Mars is where, I think this is where the Eiffel Tower will go up, if I remember correctly. But you can see that this is, in itself, religious. They call it atheistic religion, so to speak, but there's clearly a form of worship and service taking place with mass numbers of attendants, and some form of deified figure enthroned right here, and some shadowy figure in the smoke right here. I'm not really sure what's going on, but this is to, again, further indulge one into how the New World was born. So here we have a map that really puts the British Empire in perspective, why we're talking about the British Empire. This is by Arthur Mees, dated to 1910. And I mean, you just look at the stakes of flags everywhere around the world. We're talking about roughly a third of the landmass of planet Earth at this time, and really up until about World War II, belonging to Great Britain, to the British Empire. So this is serious. There's no competition as far as who owns more, who has more wealth, who controls more. So when looking into Britain, what is Britain? What is England? Well, their flag, commonly referred to as the Union Jack, this is a shorthand or a nickname, which really stands for United Jacob or United Israel. For those who don't know, I'm sure most people know, Jacob wrestles with God, wrestles with the angel, and upon waking up after this vision or this dream, he's renamed to Israel. Okay? So this flag is United Jacob, and if you keep that in mind with the last map we looked at, there's a grander message here. There's a grander symbolic connection here. And you have a artwork here in the bottom right corner. Another interesting thing to note is flags for all countries you're viewing in a rectangular form, but flags are banners. So you crop or rotate the flag on its right, and that is, when you hang it as a banner, its true shape or true form. And here you have the Red Cross, which is affiliated with the Templars and goes way back, or from the German Rosicrucian. So which just means Red Cross. But yeah, this is the British flag, United Jacob, or United Israel. And we see that even today in the New World, old world motifs and symbols and things from the past still permeate all throughout modern culture, modern depictions, modern media, entertainment. And you have some examples here. There's many allusions all throughout the Star Wars franchise. It's very esoteric. I like Star Wars now. I didn't really like it as a kid, but I think it's a lot cooler now. I can appreciate the writing that is calling back to all of these things, and it's very eloquent in the esoteric sense. But here you have a few scenes just showing these callbacks, and it's really everywhere if you have the eyes to see it. But anyway, now let's look at how Dragon and serpent is treated as we move into this modern age or this new order of the world. So one of the first times we get an English dictionary, and there might be like one, maybe two before this one, but I'm pretty sure this is the first big one that really is pulled from as far as sources go. Dragon. It's by a British person named Samuel Johnson. So with dragon, he defines it as a kind of winged serpent or a kind of winged snake. Perhaps imaginary. So he just speculates perhaps imaginary. So this British guy's just sitting here going, perhaps imaginary. He just, it's a dictionary. I don't think that should be in a dictionary. But he says, perhaps imaginary, much celebrated in the romances of the Middle Ages. Okay, so that's 1755 dictionary for English. Then the next big dictionary we get in 1828 by Noah Webster. If you've ever heard of Webster's Dictionary, well, here's your actual Noah Webster. And he I guess he agreed with what I just said about Johnson's because he removes this perhaps imaginary phrase from Johnson, but he just quotes and regurgitates what Johnson says, a kind of winged serpent, much celebrated in the romances, and he cites Johnson here. And just like with Johnson in the last slide, this is also a screen grab of the actual 1828 dictionary, if you want to look at that yourself. But even as recent as 1946, we get dragon defined as being treated as a real phenomena, not as something that is straight myth or fiction. Here in 1946, in this dictionary, we see now rare, a huge serpent, as the primary definition. So, we transition now. Let's look into dinosaurs. Let's do a historia or a investigation inquiry into dinosaurs. So the word dinosaur, originally coined by Sir Richard Owen in 1842 as dinosauria. And this is, of course, a Greek compound word ported into English. So who was Sir Richard Owen? Sir Richard Owen was a member of the British Royal Society and was also the superintendent for the British Museum of Natural History Department. And he was a knight, hence his title, Sir, for the British Crown, or the British government. So he was an agent of the Crown, an agent of the British government. And he was the head of a museum. So let's look at this word that he coined. What exactly is he saying? Why is he injecting a foreign language into English? What does he mean by invoking this foreign language into English? Well, we have two words in Greek. We have dinos and sauros. And when we translate dinos, we have scary, fearful, or terrible. And sauros, we get lizard or reptile. So transliterated, you see dinos and sauros. And combining these two, we get dinos and sauros, or in the anglicized form, dinosaur. And here you have some pictures of your dinosaurs here from Jurassic Park or Jurassic World, the new one. So let's do some history. Let's do some historia. Here we have the narrative presented by University of California, Berkeley. It is generally accepted that the first discovery of dinosaur remains in North America was made in 1854 by Ferdinand Vanderveer Hayden during his exploration of the upper Missouri River. Near the confluence of the Judith and Missouri rivers, Hayden's party recovered a small collection of isolated teeth, which were later described by the Philadelphia paleontologist Joseph Leidy in 1856 in the Proceedings of the Academy of Natural Sciences of Philadelphia. So let's look into this. Let's look at this. So, Sir Richard Owen coins the term dinosauria in 1842. 12 years later, and Sir Richard Owen, of course, a knighted agent of the British government, the British Crown. 12 years later, Ferdinand Vanderveer Hayden, an American Union Army general, so an agent of the United States government, a general in the military, discovered proof of Owen's dinosaurs via a few teeth found in Montana. And we're going to look at these teeth. We're going to look at what it is he found. And then in 1856, 2 years later, the Smithsonian affiliate and Philosophical Society member Joseph Leidy declared Van de Veer's found teeth to be, quote, from an ancient extinct Trachodon dinosaur. So what is this? What is this? What are we looking at? Well, let's break down this word now, because now we've got dinosaur, which we know is a scary or terrible reptile or scary lizard. Now we've got Trachodon. So we've got two Greek compound words thrown together. So what is Trachodon? Well, this is Trachis and Odois, or Odis. And the word Trachis just means rough or rugged, and Odis, or Odois, just means tooth. So transliteration there, the anglicization there. And what do we end up with? Trachodon means literally, we speak English, so let's translate it to English, rough tooth or rough teeth. So literally, if we speak English and avoid the switcheroo of just deciding suddenly to speak a foreign language, what he's saying is, in translation, an ancient, extinct, rough-toothed, scary reptile. Joseph Leidy, 1856. That is the declaration and the first finding for dinosaurs. So Joseph Leidy publishes his teeth that he recovers from General Hayden. And you can see here, and his piece, his work here is titled, this collection of teeth is entitled Trachodon mirabilis Teeth. And this was printed in 1860. But I want you to notice his title here and what's going on here. The title of his findings published is 3 words in 3 different languages. 3 words in 3 languages is the title of the first found dinosaur teeth. So what are we looking at? Trachodon, a compound Greek word, mirabilis, a Latin word, an adjective meaning wonderful or beautiful, and then an English word, teeth. So if we translate what he's saying, his title for this is literally Rough Teeth, Wonderful Teeth. It's beyond ironic. I mean, the linguistic game, they're playing a game here. 3 words in 3 languages. I just want you to take note of that. We're going to be seeing a recurring pattern here. But figures, if you want to look at this image, figures numbers 1 through 20 are depicting what he's calling the Trachodon, or the rough-toothed dinosaur, or the rough-toothed scary reptile. So continuing in the narrative, a short 2 years later, now in 1858, Leidy had the honor of describing the first reasonably complete dinosaur skeleton the world would know, the Hadrosaurus foucae. Named after its discoverer, William Parker Foucae, this specimen was recovered during quarrying of a sand pit in Haddonfield, New Jersey. It goes on, this specimen, now on display at the Academy of Natural Sciences of Philadelphia, was originally mounted in a freestanding bipedal pose by Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins in 1868. And this, once again, we're quoting from University of California, Berkeley. And they're giving us the historical narrative here. So, Hadrosaurus foucae, another non-English thing to try and understand in English. We have a combining of the Greek word hadros with the Greek word soros, or sorrows. Plus, now, with this, the Latin word foucae. So when we translate this, we have hadros, which means thick, dense, heavy. We have sauros, which we've already covered from Dinosauros, or dinosaur. It's a reptile or a lizard. And then foucae is just the Latinized form of William Foucae's name. So that's just Foucae, the guy, the person. So there's your transliteration, and when we anglicize it, in translation, we get Foucae's Hadrosaurus, or in full translation, Foucae's thick reptile, or Foucae's heavy reptile, or dense reptile. So we've got a photograph here. This is the citation of the photograph. I'm going to leave it up for a second, but we're about to look at the Hadrosaurus. This is a photograph taken from the display that is still up there at the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences, containing specifically 35 bones. I want you to remember that. There's only 35 bones here. And this is Wikipedia calling it, quote, fairly complete dinosaur skeleton. So let's take a look here. So you can see it here in the bottom right. This is on display at that place. And what do we have here? The two quotes again that we just read. Now we're going to look at them side by side with the image here. And I want you guys to see what the narrative is next to the image. This is, according to University of California, Berkeley, the first reasonably complete dinosaur skeleton the world would know. And on Wikipedia, for the Wikipedia on this same dinosaur, this is the first fairly complete dinosaur skeleton. And this is said to be 35 distinct bones, 35 bones. But the question is, you see the limbs here. You have what it would be an arm limb, the leg. How do they know what the head looks like without a head? How do they know the rest of the structure without it? Well, surely, and we're going to look into this, but surely they must have other bones to mix and mash together, or some idea as to how they get this rough outline. Because you've got 2 limbs out of 4, and like a rotator cuff, a piece of a pelvis, and a few linings of a vertebrae. I mean, that's all we have here. Okay, so this is the Hadrosaurus falci, the first reasonably or fairly complete skeleton. And here's another image and just a closer up view for you. Yes, so despite what many think, this is, once again, the history, the historia we're looking at right now. So, Berkeley continues, this specimen, now on display at the Academy of Natural Sciences of Philadelphia, was originally mounted in a freestanding bipedal pose by Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins in 1868. Now, what does that mean? We're about to look at what that means. Who is Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins? Here is an image. The face shot is just a face shot. The image described here in the caption is the one on the left with the dinosaur skeleton standing overarching above him. It's titled Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins Mounted Hadrosaurus in Philadelphia in 1868, making it the first mounted dinosaur skeleton in the world. So, question arises immediately. We just saw the 35 bones they found that they called the Hadrosaurus. What is this? How did we get this? Who's Benjamin Hawkins? So Benjamin Hawkins is no scientist, he's no paleontologist, he's an artist and a sculptor. And he worked for Sir Richard Owen, the coiner, the British Crown agent who coined the term dinosaur in 1842. Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins was a member of the British Society of Arts, the British Linnean Society or Linnean Society, as well as the Geological Society of London. And he was hired specifically to, quote, interpret and, quote, reconstruct dinosaurs, plural, from fragmentary bone findings. So this is an artist and a sculptor being hired by agents of the British Crown and American institutions alike to reconstruct and interpret fragmented bones that are being presented before him, and then artistically imagine or, quote, reconstruct what he thinks and what his artistic interpretation might lead him to think it actually would have looked like. So here we have from just the general wiki page of the Hadrosaurus, Joseph Leidy reconstructed the Hadrosaurus as a biped, which means it's on 2 legs, in contrast to the view at the time that such dinosaurs were quadrupedal, or on four legs, traveling on four limbs. The entire skeleton was completely assembled in 1868 by a team led by English sculptor Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins and was put on display at the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences. It was the first ever mounted dinosaur skeleton. When the skeleton was first put together, it was displayed with a plaster skull sculpted by Hawkins himself. Many other artists have recreated the Hadrosaurus with skulls from other related species. So they don't have a skull. And Hawkins invented one. He made one up for the Hadrosaurus because nobody had one. There was not a skull found that could be.
Raping minors just tipped $2. Rep him, rep her, rep him, rep her, rep her, rep him, rep her, rep her, rep her, rep
Oh, dude. Yep. Thank you, dude. Thank you. Anyway, where were we? All right, done with this one. Thank you. So the question is, will the real Hadrosaurus or will the real, quote, thick reptile please stand up? On the left in view is the, quote, reconstructed skeleton display at the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences. And this photograph was taken in 2013. In the middle, we have the picture we've already showed, the display of the bones of the Hadrosaurus at the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences. This photo in the middle was taken in 2010. And on the far right, we have Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins mounted Hadrosaurus in Philadelphia in 1868. And that's from 1868. Which is it? All of these look very different. So, on the bones they actually found, what do we know about these actual bones, particularly the 35 bones they display here? Well, here we have a quote, and it reads, "The first comprehensive skeletal form of a real dinosaur, the Hadrosaurus folki, was unearthed in Haddonfield, New Jersey. Taller than a house, it had the pelvic structure of a bird, the tail of a lizard, and incredibly, it walked upright on two legs." So he's basically enumerating the reconstruction we read about just a minute ago by Joseph Leidy. And we saw in the teeth he worked with originally, this is the same person with the 3-word in 3 languages title. But it's important to keep in mind when we read about the pelvic structure of a bird, the tail of a lizard, and incredibly walked on 2 legs, as Joseph Leidy tells us, that the entire team and the entire skeleton was assembled by a team of sculptors and artists. The skeleton as its whole, beyond these 35 bones we have here. Okay, so let's look at another quote, and now we're getting into more modern sources. The original reconstruction of Hadrosaurus folki featured a creature in a kangaroo stance, an animal that used its tail as a third leg. At the same time, while the excavated fossil was nearly complete, it lacked a skull. Because parts of its skeleton resembled those of an iguana, the skull of a modern iguana was used as a model for the skull created for the original display in 1868. That sculpted skull is currently on display at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia as a historical curiosity. That is quite the curiosity. So the reconstructed skeleton that they have on display telling you this is the Hadrosaurus folki has the head of a sculpted iguana. So once again, to show you another visual once more, on the left, we have the bones found, reportedly by American Union General Hayden. Photograph of that display in Philadelphia, and this photograph is from 2010. On the right, we have the reconstructed skeleton sculpted primarily out of plaster by a team of sculptors and artists led by Benjamin Hawkins. And this reconstruction, on display as the Hadrosaurus today, bears the sculpted skull of a modern iguana. And right there in the middle, you have what is literally a modern iguana. That is the head model used to fabricate the head of this dinosaur in this museum today. But let's continue. Let's look on. Let's look into this some more. So, how do we come about all these species and different classes and types of dinosaurs? Well, you have this era that we now refer to as the Bone Wars, which takes place in the mid to late 1800s and kind of into the early 1900s. So here's a few examples of figures prominently arising that are essential for our modern classification systems today out of this period. First, we're going to look at Florentino Emigino, an Argentinian who described 6,000 fossil species, which his brother excavated all 6,000. And it's interesting, they use 6,000. We're not going to get into numerology and the encoding of numerical meanings in this episode, but really 6,000 species exactly, not 5,999, not 6,001, but specifically 6,000 by one man. And of course, he was also the head of paleontology at La Plata Museum, where much of his 6,000 collected are all displayed. Then we have Earl Douglas. This was a United States, quote, dinosaur hunter who in Utah in 1909 found these beds now forming what are today called Dinosaur National Monument. Over his career, he sent 350 tons of excavated dinosaur bones solely and strictly to the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh. This is from Compton's Encyclopedia. 350 tons. I want you to conceptualize an image of 350 tons. So, of course, as we just said, we have 6,000, no more, no less, not 5,999, not 6,001, 6,000 species credited to our man Florentino here. And then we have to Douglas, the dinosaur hunter, 350 tons of real authentic bones, all of dinosaurs, of course, all at the Carnegie Museum. That is the equivalent of a Boeing 747's worth of bones single-handedly accredited to one man. For all our dinosaurs, fragmented bones, and findings we have today, making up the whole or a mass majority of the inventory of the Carnegie Museum. Apparently one person. 350 tons. He found a Boeing 747's worth of dinosaur bones. That's the story. This is the story we're being given. So continuing with the Bone Wars, we have two prominent figures that are the most well-known and the most cited as far as the Bone Wars, are also called the Great Dinosaur Rush. Edward Drinker Cope and Othniel Charles Marsh, or as I like to call the first one, Cope Drinker Edward, or Edward Cope Drinker. So let's look at these two, because these are the two leading figures, really, that are credited in American and Angloid history for the advent of dinosaur classifications and species discoveries. So here we have a quote from Cope, that's Edward Drinker Cope, or Cope Drinker Edward. Sternberg had learned cutthroat bone hunting. Cope and his arch-rival, Othniel Charles Marsh, professor of paleontology at Yale University, had been engaged in what have been called the Bone Wars throughout the 1870s and 1880s. It was a fierce scientific rivalry that entailed some of the most underhanded shenanigans in the history of science, but it also amassed stupendous collections of fossils. This is from The Dinosaur Project by Wayne Grady. So, Cope Drinker Edward and Othniel Charles Marsh, what did they do? What have they done? Well, Cope Drinker Edward claimed to have discovered 64 new species of dinosaur, single handedly. That's by himself. Now, since then, since the 1870s, 1880s, 55 of these 64 have been proven to be falsified, falsifications. With today, at present in 2026, 9 of his new dinosaur species still remaining accepted. So, 9 of your dinosaurs that you can look up where scientists today will say, oh, yes, this is real, 9 of these come from this prolific falsifier, forger, that 55 out of 64, well, they've already been debunked. They're no longer recognized anymore. And then we go to Othniel Charles Marsh. He claimed to have discovered 98 new species of dinosaur, or terrible lizard, scary reptile. Out of his 98 species discovered, 63 of them to this day have been proven to be falsified or falsifications, with 35 of his new, quote, dinosaur species still remaining accepted at the present time. So that's a total of 44 species of dinosaurs still espoused today that all originate from just these two men, who have a much longer list of falsification in their track record. So 44 types of dinosaurs. I'm not sure which ones they are, but these are the official numbers. So I'd be very skeptical of those 44. If Marsh proposes 98 and we know 63 of them are false, why should I believe, or why should I devoutly believe without questioning the remaining 35? Same thing with Cope Drinker Edward. 64 proposed, 55 we know are false. 9 remain. So again, that's what I would make I think a strong position, strong argument to say. At least 44 species of dinosaurs we really need to call into question. So in short, dinosaurs are presented to the public with institutionally funded artistic imaginations, reconstructions, and sculpted skeletons and bones across museums, along with movies, television programs, and media. The fact is, no dinosaur complete skeleton has ever been found or has ever been known to exist. And this is a fact. There is no skeleton of a dinosaur. They are all artistic interpretations, artistic creations, and interpretively designed by sculptors and artists. So here we have modern quotes today saying exactly what I'm saying. So don't take my word for it. Don't believe me. Let's look at what the people running museums and institutions right now say. Well, here we have, that's because no complete dinosaur skeleton has yet been found. Museum curators have had to create composite creatures using the bits of different individuals. This is from The Times, reporting on the review of Nature's Memory from 2025. We have another quote here. There is no complete dinosaur skeleton, explained to Mr. Hyslop. So all 3 fossils have been enhanced with cast, sculpted, 3D printed materials and are displayed on custom frames. Now, this person saying this here is the head of science and natural history at Christie's Museum. This is a head of a museum in 2024. There's no complete dinosaur skeleton, and they use sculpted casts, 3D printing now, and customized frames. So it's all, what is this? This is what we really just, we watch Jurassic Park and this is canon to us. This is just the way it is. Jurassic Park's real. No, you're cooked. If you believe in dinosaurs, it's cooked.